One wrong door and an unexpected human on the other side. In a galaxy of countless worlds, a single moment sparks curiosity, laughter, and a connection no one saw coming. The young alien heir padded quietly along the gleaming corridors of the human fleet outpost, her long ears twitching slightly with every sound that echoed off the polished metal walls. She had always found palace life tedious, a mixture of pomp, protocol, and endless waiting for things that were supposedly important. Today, though, curiosity had finally won over obedience. She wanted to see the human side of the outpost, the part that her tutors and attendants always warned her to avoid. Somewhere in the labyrinth of corridors lay a room she had never seen before, a room that belonged to a human soldier whose reputation for dull efficiency made him an unlikely subject of fascination. And yet, the idea of discovering something unscripted, something raw and ordinary in this hyper-disciplined human environment, was too tantalizing to resist. Her silvery blonde hair, loosely braided so it would not snag on the metal frames of the ship, shimmered faintly under the corridor's lights, and the faint glow of her pale skin gave her an otherworldly presence even in the sterile environment. She moved with the cautious grace of someone who had been trained to walk softly in palace corridors. Yet the thrill of sneaking into forbidden areas made her steps quicker than intended. She paused now and then to observe a control panel, her pale fingers tracing the human symbols etched into the interface, and she let out a soft, bemused sigh. "Why do they make everything look like a holographic cake recipe?" she murmured to herself, her tone amused rather than critical. The corridors seemed to stretch endlessly, and she could hear the faint hum of the ship's energy cores vibrating through the walls, a constant reminder that this place, alien as it seemed, was alive in its own peculiar way. Meanwhile, on the other side of a thin metal door, the human soldier was attempting to enjoy a rare moment of downtime. He leaned back in his chair, boots propped on a table that held an array of human snacks and an overcomplicated mug filled with something that smelled faintly like coffee, but probably was. His brow furrowed as he stared at the holographic display in front of him, which flickered between mission logs, maintenance schedules, and a strangely captivating screensaver that looked like an endless cascade of glowing cubes. "Honestly," he muttered, "if they wanted me to relax, they should have just given me a book, not a glowing Rubik's Cube nightmare." He stretched and yawned, not expecting anything or anyone to disrupt his peace. That was about to change. A sudden knock at the door startled both of them. For the human, it was just a faint series of raps, polite yet persistent. For the alien heir, it was the first real misstep of her little adventure. She had intended to sneak in without any announcement, but her oversized curiosity had betrayed her. Hesitating, she pressed her slender hand against the smooth metal panel beside the door, trying to remember the human custom for knocking. She had seen it in the simulations, of course, but somehow, in the moment, the correct rhythm eluded her. She rapped once, then twice, then added an extra thump that sounded almost like an exclamation point. The door slid open with a hiss, and she blinked. There, sitting with perfect casualness in the middle of a room that was anything but regal, was a human soldier. He had sharp, slightly sunburned features, short brown hair that stubbornly refused to stay in place, and eyes that flickered with a mixture of curiosity and barely contained amusement. His chair squeaked as he shifted, and a faint smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. He said, "You lost." The alien heir froze, her mind racing. She hadn't expected to find a human here, let alone one who looked entirely unbothered by her sudden intrusion. Her long ears twitched nervously. I may have misjudged the door," she admitted, her voice delicate but carrying a playful lilt. She tried to glance past him, perhaps for some sign that another, more official human would appear, but the room seemed entirely ordinary, cluttered with human gadgets, worn chairs, and an assortment of personal effects that made the space feel almost comically domestic. The human soldier leaned back, resting his arm on the back of his chair, his smirk widening. "Well, that's one way to introduce yourself," he said, gesturing at her ceremonial datapad, which had slipped from her grasp and now lay near his boot. "Clumsy for someone with superior intelligence, aren't we?" His tone was teasing but not unkind, and the alien heir couldn't help but let out a soft, embarrassed laugh. She bent to retrieve the pad, brushing it off with a flick of her fingers, and for a moment, she felt the strange warmth of someone finding her less intimidating than she imagined. "I assure you," she said, straightening and attempting to regain her royal composure, "I am usually more coordinated." Her ears twitched again as she gave him a polite but slightly awkward nod. "Aha," he replied, raising an eyebrow. "You might want to practice the part about usually." He leaned forward slightly, resting his chin on his hand in mock seriousness. "Although I guess being clumsy with style is kind of a talent on its own." She tilted her head, intrigued by his lack of formality, the gentle teasing that seemed designed to diffuse tension rather than create it. "You humans," she mused aloud, "you have a curious way of dealing with strangers. You don't seem offended, just amused." He shrugged. "We like to keep things interesting," he said. "Otherwise, life in a metal box orbiting who knows what planet gets boring fast. You aliens, do you do this with each other? Just wander into rooms, make a mess, and hope for the best." She chuckled, the sound light and melodic, making her long ears sway. "Not unless it's an important experiment in trust and etiquette," she replied. Then, after a beat, she added with a playful smile, "Or if one is terribly bored, which is sometimes the same thing." The soldier laughed, a short, genuine burst of sound that made the room feel warmer than it had seconds before. "Well, then I guess I'm your first volunteer test subject." He tilted his head, grinning. "Don't worry, I promise not to report this to any superiors, at least not until I've had more evidence that your clumsiness is habitual." The alien heir's eyes sparkled with a mixture of relief and mischief. "Very well," she said, stepping fully into the room. "I shall allow this test, but only because I am curious about your species' definition of humor. I suspect it differs greatly from our own." "Oh, you have no idea," he said, leaning back once more and motioning toward a pair of chairs. "Grab a seat, and tell me about your superior intelligence while you're at it. I'm sure there's a story behind it." She hesitated briefly, then allowed herself to relax, perching delicately on the edge of the nearest chair. Her long ears dipped slightly in a gesture that might have been called amusement on her planet. "Very well," she began, "but I must warn you, human soldier, my stories tend to involve politics, absurd ceremonial traditions, and occasional accidental rebellions, none of which you might understand fully." "Try me," he said, leaning forward with mock intensity. "Worst case scenario, I pretend to understand while secretly judging your ear style. Best case, I learn something and maybe even laugh a little." The alien heir's lips curved in a faint, mischievous smile. "Then perhaps we shall both gain something today," she said. And with that, she launched into her tale, weaving stories of her world, her upbringing, and the comically strict rituals that marked her life. The soldier listened intently, interjecting occasionally with jokes that drew laughter from her, laughter that was light, unguarded, and utterly human in its sincerity. Hours seemed to pass unnoticed as the two of them navigated the vast gulf of their differences. Through humor, playful teasing, and shared curiosity, the alien heir and the human soldier discovered the first tentative strands of understanding, a connection that neither had expected when a simple knock at a door had set this unusual meeting in motion. And though the corridor outside remained silent and the rest of the outpost carried on in its usual disciplined manner, in this small room, a bond was quietly forming, fragile but undeniable, held together by curiosity, amusement, and the subtle magic of chance. The alien heir returned the next day, this time with more confidence, her long ears swaying gently as she moved down the corridors of the outpost. She had spent the previous night replaying the encounter in her mind, noting every glance, every laugh, and every small human quirk that had captured her curiosity. The halls were quiet, save for the steady hum of the ship's energy conduits and the occasional beep of maintenance bots making their rounds. She paused to peer through a window into the observation deck, watching a human crew member struggle to assemble a complicated-looking device, muttering under his breath in a language she found surprisingly expressive for someone so physically restrained. Her lips curved in a small smile. Humans, she thought, had a delightful tendency to mix frustration with determination, as if every minor catastrophe were also an adventure. The human soldier was waiting inside his quarters, leaning against the wall with a book in hand, or at least what looked like a book. On closer inspection, the pages flickered with faint holographic lines that shifted depending on the angle of view. "I didn't expect a second visit so soon," he said, lowering the book with a grin. "Do you have a quota for embarrassing yourself in human spaces, or is this a voluntary challenge?" "Voluntary," she said, bowing slightly, her long ears brushing the air like elegant curtains. "Though I must admit, curiosity is a strong motivator, and I found our previous encounter informative." She gave him a look that was both mischievous and studious, a strange combination that seemed to unbalance him for a moment. "Well, I'm flattered," he replied, gesturing to the small table scattered with human snacks. "Care for some fuel before we start? My taste in edible things is questionable, but it's a good conversation starter." She glanced at the spread, tilting her head as she studied the assortment of colorful packets and oddly shaped containers. "It appears you humans have an unusual interpretation of nourishment. Do you eat all of these at once?" He laughed, picking up a small packet and waving it like a flag. "Only if I want to explode in a spectacularly undignified way. Otherwise, I pace myself. Care to try?" She took one cautiously, her delicate fingers brushing the packet in a tentative gesture. She opened it and discovered a small, oddly fragrant morsel. When she bit into it, her eyes widened, not with disgust, but with genuine surprise. "Curious," she said, carefully pronouncing the word as if it were a magical incantation. "This flavor, it is strange but enjoyable. I did not expect pleasure from such a combination of processed matter." He nodded, grinning. "We call it snack. Simple, right? Though I wouldn't recommend it for formal dinners. Humans take their formal dinners very seriously, which is ironic considering our snack habits." They shared a quiet laugh, the sound mingling with the low hum of the ship. The alien Heir allowed herself to relax more than she had the day before, letting the human soldier's humor act as a bridge across the vast chasm of their differences. "Tell me more about your world," he said, gesturing toward her with mock solemnity. "I need to know if all of your species' peculiarities are concentrated in one individual, or if it's a general problem of long ears and overly elaborate customs." Her lips twitched. "I assure you this is no generalization. Most of my peers are less audacious, or perhaps less curious, but I find that curiosity often leads to the most interesting encounters. Though I must admit, your species' indifference to decorum is amusing." He raised an eyebrow. "Indifference to decorum? I'd call it flexibility. Rules are only fun when you get to bend them." She considered this, her pale eyes thoughtful. "Flexibility, I like that term, perhaps I shall adopt it. Though bending rules sometimes has consequences, yes. Depends on who's watching," he said, smirking. "And on how creative you are with the consequences. Speaking of creativity, care to see something genuinely human?" She tilted her head, intrigued. "I am most willing, provided it is not a punishment." He gestured toward a small corner of the room, where a peculiar contraption rested. It looked like a cross between a drone, a toy, and a miniature art installation. "This little guy is a zero-gravity prankster drone. It's designed to annoy humans in amusing ways, though I often use it for more productive tasks. You can try it if you dare." The alien Heir's eyes sparkled with interest. "I accept your challenge." She reached for the drone, her long fingers brushing over its smooth metallic surface. With a soft hum, the drone activated, floating effortlessly above the table. Her ears twitched in delight as she watched it spin, emit tiny bursts of harmless light, and then gently drift toward her. "This is delightful," she murmured. He grinned, leaning back. "See, humans know how to make even small devices entertaining, though I should warn you, it has a sense of humor. Sometimes it chooses its own targets." As if to prove the point, the drone darted toward him, nudging his shoulder lightly before zipping back toward the air. She laughed, a sound so pure and unguarded that it made him grin wider. "It is mischievous, like a sentient creature," she said. "Or perhaps it reflects your species' penchant for playful chaos." He nodded, feigning offense. "Playful chaos, I prefer to call it structured unpredictability. But yes, I see your point. It's hard to tell where the fun ends and the disaster begins. They spent the next hour experimenting with the drone, taking turns steering it through the room, laughing as it defied expectations, knocking over a cup here, brushing against a chair there, each mishap creating more amusement than frustration. In these small, shared moments, the alien heir found herself learning not only about humans but about herself. How much she enjoyed unpredictability, how laughter could diffuse tension even in the strangest circumstances, and how trust could grow in subtle, almost imperceptible ways. At one point, the human soldier leaned over and whispered conspiratorially, "You know, if anyone found us doing this, they'd probably assume we'd lost our minds. But I think we're onto something, a new diplomatic strategy." Drones and laughter. She blinked, then tilted her head in a mock-serious manner. "Indeed. Perhaps I shall report this to my council as the most advanced human interaction experiment yet conducted, though I suspect they will not appreciate the methods employed." "Methods?" he said, raising an eyebrow. "You mean flying metal balls of chaos, highly advanced if you ask me." She laughed, covering her mouth with a slender hand. "I believe I am learning the nuances of your species more rapidly than anticipated. And your humor, it is infectious." The conversation drifted, flowing naturally from topics of spacecraft engineering to the subtleties of human leisure, then into playful speculation about interspecies fashion trends. Her ears, he joked, were perfect for displaying hats, but hopelessly impractical for helmets. She feigned indignation, which made him laugh harder, and she could not deny the warmth that spread in her chest at the sound. Time became fluid. Outside, the hum of the ship's engines continued, the corridors silent, the rest of the outpost continuing its disciplined march of activity, unaware of the quiet, unexpected connection forming in this small human room. The alien heir found herself daring to linger longer than propriety would normally allow, enjoying the playful banter, the shared laughter, and the gentle teasing that had begun to feel less like mockery and more like camaraderie. Eventually, she stood, brushing the last hints of imaginary dust from her ceremonial robes. "I must depart before suspicion arises," she said, though neither of them made a move to end the interaction. "But I thank you, human soldier, for your patience and amusement. I look forward to further experiments." He smirked, leaning back once more. "You're welcome, and don't worry, I'll keep your secrets. Mostly because I want to see what happens next." She inclined her head in acknowledgement, her long ears brushing the air, and then glided gracefully toward the door, pausing only to toss a playful glance over her shoulder. "Next time," she said softly, "perhaps you shall demonstrate some of your species' culinary wonders, or at least teach me how not to accidentally destroy them." He grinned, muttering to himself as she disappeared down the corridor. "I have a feeling this is just the beginning." As the door slid shut, the hum of the ship enveloped him again, but the memory of her laughter, the playful glint in her pale eyes, and the warmth of shared amusement lingered, a quiet testament to the unexpected bridges that chance encounters could build, even across species, worlds, and centuries of cultural divide. In that small, cluttered room, friendship had begun to take root, nurtured by humor, curiosity, and the gentle, unspoken thrill of discovering someone utterly different and utterly captivating. The alien heir's return to the human soldier's quarters was quieter this time, her steps measured but her heart racing with anticipation. She had spent countless cycles reflecting on their prior encounters, replaying the human's laughter, his dry humor, and the gentle teasing that had made her chest feel lighter than it had in months. Today was not just another experiment in trust. It was a deliberate venture into a world she had previously observed only from the edges. Her long ears twitched slightly, betraying her nervous excitement, and the soft glow of her skin caught the ship's ambient lighting as she paused in the corridor, taking a deep breath of recycled air. She adjusted the folds of her ceremonial robes, more for comfort than propriety, and stepped forward, determined to make the encounter as seamless as possible. The human soldier was already there, leaning against the table with a half-eaten snack in one hand and a cluttered holopad displaying a star map in the other. "Back so soon?" he asked, his grin warm but teasing, as if he already anticipated the chaos she might bring. Or did my previous brilliance in conversation leave you unsatisfied? The alien heir's lips quirked in amusement. I assure you, she said, stepping fully into the room, your brilliance was noted and duly appreciated. But I came not for conversation alone, but for shared experience. She tilted her head in that curious, almost mischievous way that had begun to unsettle and intrigue him in equal measure. He raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. Shared experience, huh? Sounds ominous. Should I prepare for interstellar mischief? Possibly, she said, a faint smile on her lips. Though I promise it will be educational. She gestured toward a small, peculiar box she carried, humming softly with internal energy. It is a device from my world. It can generate, unpredictable environments, though only on a small scale. He tilted his head, eyes glinting with curiosity. Unpredictable environments, like fun chaos in a box. Exactly, she said, placing the device carefully on the table. I thought we might explore our cultural differences in a more interactive manner. She pressed a sequence of buttons, and in an instant, the room shimmered and folded, the air vibrating with a strange harmonic resonance. The corners of the room blurred as if reality itself were being teased, walls shifting imperceptibly. A holographic skyline of her home planet projected faintly around them. Even the floor seemed to ripple slightly, and the faint scent of alien flora, sweet, metallic, and utterly foreign, filled the air. The human soldier blinked, a laugh escaping him before he could stop it. Okay, that is impressive. Also, slightly terrifying. I feel like I should have brought a helmet. She laughed softly, her long ears swaying with the motion. You humans worry excessively about danger. There is minimal risk here, mostly intellectual and sensory. She extended a delicate hand toward him. Come, explore. He took her hand cautiously, though the contact was brief, and allowed himself to be drawn into the shifting holographic landscape. Together, they moved among floating projections of her world, touching shimmering rivers that felt cold and solid beneath their fingers, stepping through floating gardens that smelled faintly of ozone and alien spices. She demonstrated her species, unique methods of interacting with these environments, gestures that shaped the light and sound, movements that caused projected flora to bloom and release bursts of iridescent pollen. He followed along, awkwardly mimicking her gestures and failing spectacularly at first. I think I just made a holographic tree sneeze, he muttered, causing both of them to laugh. The air's laughter was light and infectious, a sound that seemed to bend even the simulated reality around them with its warmth. You humans, she said between giggles, have a remarkable talent for unintended comedy. It is delightful. And you aliens, he shot back, have a talent for making a normal room feel like a vacation planet. This is absurdly fun. Hours passed in a whirlwind of shared exploration, jokes, and gentle teasing. They discovered a floating pond where tiny holographic creatures skimmed the surface, laughing as he accidentally splashed them with a motion that caused the projections to flicker and giggle in a way that mimicked sentient response. She showed him how to manipulate small arcs of energy to make the creatures dance, and he tried with clumsy determination, each failed attempt punctuated by her laughter and his self-deprecating remarks. Gradually, the alien heir noticed something within herself shifting. She had come here expecting to study, to gather knowledge and perhaps amuse herself at a human's expense, but she found that she was learning in unexpected ways. Patience, humility, and the joy of shared absurdity. The soldier, in turn, displayed a humanity that went beyond jokes and sarcasm, an unexpected gentleness, a willingness to meet her curiosity with openness, and an almost naive delight in discovering her world, even in simulated form. As the projections dimmed, the room returning to its familiar state, the heir sat on the edge of a chair, her long ears drooping slightly in contentment. This has been most enlightening, she said softly. I anticipated learning about your species, yet I find I have also learned about myself. He nodded, smiling warmly. Same here. Never thought I'd find so much adventure in someone knocking on my door and staying long enough to mess up my furniture with holograms. He gestured to a chair now faintly scorched from a minor energy spark, a relic of their playful experiments. We've done damage, yes, but meaningful damage. That counts for something, right? She inclined her head in agreement, a thoughtful smile on her lips. Meaningful damage, yes. Perhaps this is how understanding begins, not with protocol nor with ceremony, but with laughter, shared risk, and the occasional mistake. He chuckled. I like that. Mistakes are underrated. He paused, then added, You've changed things here, not just my room, but perspective. I'll never look at my daily routines the same way again, and I think that's a good thing. And you have changed me, she said, her tone quiet but earnest. I am accustomed to the constraints of expectation and ceremony, yet your presence, your humor, it has allowed me to discover flexibility, curiosity unbound by etiquette, and joy I had not anticipated. Her long ears flicked, as if emphasizing the sincerity of her words. They shared a moment of silence, not awkward, but reflective, both aware that something profound had grown between them. A bond built on laughter, curiosity, and mutual respect that transcended worlds and customs. In that quiet space, the heir realized that her impulsive knocking on a door had led not to scandal or reprimand, but to connection, understanding, and growth. Suddenly, the drone from their previous encounter buzzed back to life, hovering with playful unpredictability, reminding them of their lighter adventures. He swatted at it lazily, grinning. Can't let it get too serious, can we? She laughed, reaching for it and gently redirecting it with a soft gesture. Indeed, even profound discoveries are better when punctuated with amusement. The human soldier shook his head, smiling at her. I don't know what your advisors would say if they saw us right now. Probably something about protocol, decorum, and impending intergalactic incidents. And yet, she said, standing and smoothing her robes, we have survived, thrived even without incident. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson, that worlds, no matter how different, can meet in spaces of curiosity and laughter. He nodded. Agreed. And maybe that's how alliances begin, not with speeches or treaties, but with someone knocking on the wrong door and finding the right company on the other side. The heir inclined her head in acknowledgement, her long ears flicking softly as she moved toward the door, ready to leave, but with a sense of anticipation for the next encounter. Then I shall consider this mission a success, and I shall return when curiosity demands. He waved casually, a grin on his face. I'll hold you to that, just try not to destroy anything else. As she departed, the hum of the ship surrounded him once more, yet the room felt different, imbued with laughter, shared memories, and a bridge between worlds that had not existed before. Both the alien heir and the human soldier had been changed by the experience. She, embracing the unpredictable joys of connection and humor. He, recognizing the wonder of curiosity and openness beyond his own narrow routines. Their worlds remained vast and separate, yet in that small room across the vastness of space, they had discovered something rare: trust, friendship, and the quiet beginnings of understanding. And in the silence that followed, both knew, without words, that this was only the first chapter of many adventures, that laughter and curiosity could bind even the most unlikely of allies, and that a single knock on a door had the power to reshape destiny. And in the silence that followed, both knew, without words, that this was only the first chapter of many adventures, that laughter and curiosity could bind even the most unlikely of allies, and that a single knock on a door had the power to reshape destinies in ways neither had anticipated. The human soldier smiled faintly at the fading echoes of her presence, and the alien heir, walking swiftly down the corridor, felt a lightness in her step, certain that the galaxy held more surprises and more laughter than she had ever imagined.